Hi, writers. We have a real treat for you today. I am joined with Janet Fox. Welcome, Janet.
Hi, everybody. I'm happy to be here.
And let me introduce you to our writers and all the wonderful things that you've done and are doing. So, Janet is an award-winning author with a deep passion for the magic of storytelling. Her writing journey began at age 8 with a poem published in the town newspaper, setting the stage for a career dedicated to writing captivating tales for young readers. As a writer, Janet strives to create books that can help grow young hearts and minds. Her 12 award-winning books span the spectrum of picture books through young adult in a broad variety of genres. As a mentor and a book coach with 25 years in publishing, her mission is to guide writers through the twists and turns of their creative odyssey, turning struggles into triumphs. Janet has helped scores of writers achieve their dream of writing, revising, and yes, publishing their children's books. And as you can hear, writers, Janet has done so many things in the world of writing and publishing, and we are going to talk with her today about writing across all these genres that she's written across, because that is no easy feat. So perhaps maybe could you give us a little bit of background on your career? Like what did you first start with when you broke into KidLit?
Yeah, thanks, Sarah. I started with a little nonfiction book that I wrote because my son was struggling in middle school. And it turns out he's dyslexic and ADHD. So I wrote this book in the middle of trying to write picture books, as all of us had to start with picture book writing. And this one came out just poured out of me because I had done so much research trying to help him. And I realized, wow, there was no other book like it in the market. And so I literally put together a proposal in a week. I sent it to exactly the right publisher on my own, and they bought it. And so that gave me sort of the street cred, the way this works. I got into understanding things, so that when I finally met someone who wanted to represent me in my first actual novel, which is a YA novel, she told me that having been published by Free Spirit was a really great platform for me to start with. And then I wrote with her. I wrote 3 young adult novels. Then I moved into middle grade because I have a real fondness for the middle grade language, sensibility, mindset, storytelling, and fantasy, which is something I grew up with the Narnia books
Sure.
and mysteries that Nancy Drew. And so started writing middle grade, and then have now written middle grade fiction, nonfiction, and now picture books. And so sort of across the board. Yeah.
Yeah, that's so interesting. You started with the older and moved to the younger.
Yeah. The first three novels, and they were great for cutting my teeth on novel structure. So after writing the little nonfiction book, which is very short and totally, how to actually do, what you need
Yeah.
to do in middle school, those novels were great training for me to understand how to write a novel.
Yeah.
Then it became easier to write those middle grade stories. Yeah.
I love the story of your first book because I feel like it's a perfect example. Like when we talk to writers about
Mhm.
writing their query letters, for instance, and making it clearer, like, why are you the person to write this book?
Mm,
And why
mm,
is now a good
mm.
time for this book to be out in the world? And it feels like
Yeah.
both of those questions were easily answered for you in that book.
Yeah, that's exactly right. And I think that's a really important point, that having that passion for the subject that you're writing about, whatever it is, really shows up on the page. And so I was passionate about getting this information into the hands of kids, because I couldn't find that book to give to my son, and to make it funny and to make it accessible and to have all of those little tips and tricks. That book, by the way, is still in print. It's in 7 languages. It's sold in the hundreds of thousands of copies. So it really does pay to have that passion behind whatever project you're working on. So if you're searching for a subject, think of something that's really, really important to you, that really feeds your heart.
Yeah. Yeah.
Yeah.
No, that's fantastic. And And when you moved on to your YA, those were all novels, right?
Right, 3 novels. Yep,
And
all historical fiction.
okay, I was just going to ask if they were all within the
Mhm,
same genre. And then you
mhm,
moved into your middle grade. And are there mixed genres then within the middle grade? You mentioned fantasy, or are they?
mhm. So I started my first middle grade. The Charmed Children of Rookskill Castle. It's a middle grade fantasy set in World War II, and really, it's kind of an homage to Narnia, to C.S. Lewis, because I loved those books growing up, and I had this vision after seeing something on the internet that just really felt mysterious and compelling. An image of a chatelaine, which is a 17th century piece of, well, it started out as a set of keys for the chateau and then became a piece of jewelry like a charm bracelet. And this one was really weird. And it just struck me and I thought, charms, charmed kids. And that story grew from there, and it grew very quickly from that sort of nascent idea. And then the second middle grade was a follow-up to it, the Artifact Hunters, and set in the same setting with a slightly different cast of characters, a different main character, and a different premise. But again, a middle grade fantasy. And it was just so much fun writing those books. I just had a blast writing those books.
Yeah.
So yeah, and then I went into contemporary middle grade. So, and now I'm back to mysteries.
Yes, well, I'm going to put a plug for your book, the contemporary middle grade, the Carry Me
Oh,
Home.
thank you. Thank you.
It's a beautiful book. It's actually one of my favorites in middle grade.
Oh, thank
So
you.
I
Thank
I
you.
think it's so well done. So as you are moving from genre to genre and age category to age category,
Mhm.
did your agent or your editors that you were working with, like, did anybody have input on these decisions you were making, or were you writing the
Hmm.
books that you wanted to write at the time you wanted to write them?
That's a great question, because that gets to another thing that I think writers should hear, and that is that my first agent signed me on the basis of the novel that she
Mm.
saw, Faithful, which was my first novel, and then she uh, pitched it and got a 2-book deal for me. And then, as I was finishing book number 2 in that, Forgiven, my editor approached me and said, or approached my agent and said, I'd like a third book set in 1920, maybe, because it was popular at the time. And so I wrote that book. My agent at the time wanted me to continue writing those young adult romantic historical romances, and I was tired of them. And maybe you can tell already that I kind of follow my heart in a big way when I'm writing, and if I'm not really engaged in the story, I can't write it. It just isn't happening. So I started writing The Charmed Children of Rookskill Castle, and my agent did not like it. She didn't get it. Um, we parted company, which was very difficult for me because it
Yeah.
felt like I was starting over. But within 2 months, I signed with the agent of my dreams, the person that I had wanted to sign with when I very first started out, but she didn't sign me. So the moral of the story is twofold. One is that many writers, in fact, I don't think I know a writer who hasn't had at least 2 agents. In other words, it's very common for you to have an agent and then part company and then find someone else. So it's not unusual. So that's something that happens. And the second thing is you have to be true to yourself above everything else. And so when I parted company with my agent, it was a real my I'm out there again all by myself. But I believed in this book so much. I knew that this book was going to be a great book, and it wasn't. I mean, it's my most popular book. My other than the Little Get Organized book, it's sold, earned out, and sold many thousands of copies, and and won awards and so on. So uh, I'm really glad that I just went forward with that, and I think that it's good for writers to know that this does happen and to follow your passions above everything else.
No, that's
Yeah.
beautiful. And I feel like we need to give you a round of applause for the bravery because, I mean, you can talk about it now and be like, it all turned out for the best, but I'm sure it
Right.
had to be a bit terrifying at the time that you're going through it because you really are putting yourself out
Yeah.
on a ledge again. And
Yeah.
that's kudos to you for being brave. So
Thanks. Yeah. And agents, my agent is a very hands-on agent. She has a lot of input into what I write. And after I finished The Artifact Hunters, I sent her 4 ideas. And I said, what do you think of these 4 ideas and which we should pursue next? And she, helped me choose the next path. And then I wrote Carry Me Home, which I wrote in like 5 minutes, which has never happened to me before. And that book came because I'd been thinking about the problem of homelessness for maybe 5-7 years, and it just festered inside me, and I had to get it out. So I wrote that book really fast and sent it to her, and she loved it right away, which was nice.
yeah.
But she does have input on the next project, and she will say, no, I don't think that's going to work, or yeah, go for it. Right now we're going back and forth on another picture book, and she's which is just to tell you how hard picture books are. I started it in November and we're still going back and forth.
Yeah.
So,
Yeah.
yeah.
Well, now that you have this perspective of having written so many different types of books,
Mm-hmm.
do you mind if I ask what you enjoy about each kind? What do you enjoy about picture books, let's say?
Great question. I love that picture books are a marriage of poetry and story, because picture books have to have a story arc. They have to, but it's incredibly tiny. So the problem in a picture book might be so tiny, tiny, tiny to you and me, but monstrously large to a young child. And that's what you have to find the heart of that problem and be able to put it into a story form. And then you have to actually make it poetry by using very spare diction and syntax. It's not a lot of words. I try to keep my picture books under 500 words, which is tiny, tiny. So again, you're marrying 2 different things, which is the story form and poetry. And so that's what makes picture books so hard, is getting exactly the right words and not one word
Yes.
more, or not not missing that word. It's the way you say that story has to be so succinct. So that's my feeling about picture books, that they're really hard to write.
Yeah.
Um, yeah.
And
Um,
what about middle grade? What have you enjoyed about writing middle grade?
I love middle grade because I just feel like that's where I'm emotionally stuck. You know, we all get stuck somewhere in our childhood in a way. I was a really awkward preteen, just felt really out of touch with my peers, felt like I couldn't, I wasn't the kid at the popular lunch table. Um, I had nerdy friends. We used to sing "I'm in with the out crowd." That was our theme song. And once I sort of realized that that's a place where I was wrestling with all of those changes that happened to the middle grade kid, I really feel like I got that. I feel like I resonate with that. When I go talk to kids in school visits, um, I let them know that that's the kind of kid I was, and not to feel left out,
Yeah.
because it's going to be okay. It's going to be okay. So that's what I love about writing middle grade, that I can get right into that twist and pull and turn and questions and and the nascent romantic interests, if they're there, and so and also mysteries and fantasy. That's when your imagination really can explode and can really play with all of those elements in a story.
Yeah.
So
And
yeah.
round us out here with YA. What did you enjoy about writing your YA?
Well, I'm writing a YA right now, and I'm finding that that's that other element of high intensity romance. When you fall in love that first time and really fall head over heels, there is nothing like it. I mean, it's just so intense, it just takes over your whole being. So I'm writing that story now with some fantasy elements, and I'm really having fun with it. It's just letting it go. I don't even care if this one sells. I'm just having so much fun playing with the concepts and writing it. And again, it's all about that other bridge into adulthood. So stepping away from the who am I, who am I, who am I? It's who am I in relation to everybody else around me? And can I define myself in this relationship that I want so badly, or do I need to figure something else out that makes me even, more wholly who I am? So it's just another step in that progression. Yeah.
Awesome.
Yeah.
So
Yeah.
I know we have some writers in the audience here
Yay.
who are also writing across genre or are interested in making the leap from one category to another category. Do you have any tips for those writers on what to do?
Well, I go back to write what you're passionate about. Go back to writing something that really speaks to you, that resonates with you. Don't worry about the genre. I mean, I tell this to my students all the time. Do not worry about your word count. Do not worry about your genre. Get the characters and the story elements and start to pull them together. And then you'll discover what your genre really is. I mean, I almost don't know sometimes when I'm starting a story where it's going to fit in that audience age range. I have an idea, but until I start writing it, then I say, oh yeah, this has to be a YA because I want this to be a romance. So I know that that's the audience that I'm writing for, and then I'm comfortable with it. When I was writing Carry Me Home, I knew that it had to be middle grade because I just had a feeling for this character. And it turned out to be on the younger end of middle grade. And so I tailored it in that fashion, really short chapters, simplified voice and language, and not a lot of complexity, a really straightforward story with some backstory elements. So I think if you're passionate about your idea, that's what you should do. That's what you should write. Don't try to write to a genre. Don't try to write to what's popular out there, because frankly, even if you did, 5 minutes from now, it won't be popular. It won't be what everybody is reading. It won't be what publishers want. So write what you want to write when you want to write it, and trust your heart, as opposed to looking at the marketing landscape, which who knows what to do with that.
It's so true. And especially, I mean, we know publishing takes a long time, but especially the KidLit market seems to be even slower, especially if illustrations are involved. And you might get a book picked up today that won't appear in print 3 years from now. So
No, that's right. I sold Winter Garden. I wrote Winter Garden, which is my picture book. I wrote that during COVID, at the beginning stages of COVID, when we were in lockdown, in response to not having a garden I could play in and having just this little windowsill garden. And it came out in November. So,
yeah.
because it takes that long. But yeah, you can't make the market or publishing do what you want it to do. It has to be from you, from what you're passionate about.
Yeah, I love it.
Yeah.
Well, writers, we'll have Janet's books featured in the book fair for KidLit Summer Camp, but we also want to make sure that people can connect with you. So what is the
Yeah.
best way for writers to connect with you?
The easiest thing is to go to my website, which is janetsfox.com. Pretty simple. And so Janet's Fox. and on that website, you'll find everything that I have and can do. I teach classes. I have independent courses. I have courses from the very beginner stage all the way through to a what I'm calling Fox's Den, which is a mentorship program. That's a small group program in which I interact heavily with my students. We meet twice a month for 2 hours each time. They send me things, and I critique them. They work with each other. So that's the high intensity part of it. And then I have all the independent courses as well, from everything from picture book writing to character to plot to a whole raft of introductory and upper level courses. So
Lovely. And the Fox's Den is KidLit writers, right?
yes, it's all KidLit writers. Yep. It's
Excellent.
picture book through young adult, and I have the whole range of students. So
yes.
yeah.
Wonderful.
Yeah.
Wonderful. So yes, writers, definitely find Janet on her website, and she'll have links to all the things that might be interested to you. And we will also link to Janet's site so you can find it easily. And Janet, I just want to thank you again for your time and for this fabulous conversation.
Thank you, Sarah. It's so great to be here. Thanks.
All right, writers, thanks for joining us, and we will catch you next time. Bye.
Bye.